I'm good now.
Okay, great. Okay, it's 2 minutes after 4 and the meeting is called to order. The first agenda item is approval of minutes, and that's for July 11th of 2022. Are there any additions or corrections? Hearing none, we need a motion from,
Motion to approve the minutes.
is there a second?
Second.
Is there any other discussion? Hearing none. All those approve, say aye. All those opposed? None opposed, so the minutes are approved as read. The next approval of minutes is for August 8th, 2022. Are there any additions or corrections? And I do have some corrections for the minutes. Under members present, or excuse me, absent, Paul Marlowe came in late, so he was actually absent and gave his update. And then we have our trip to the Recreation Commission members went to Sand Island, and not all of the Parks Commission went, but we had absent Carmen, Dina, Paul, and Brandon. Okay. Any other comments? Any motion from the commission?
Second.
And is there any other discussion? All those approve the minutes as read, say aye. All those opposed? Minutes are approved as read. Are there any topics from the floor, from attendees? Steve?
No, I've been invited to speak earlier, but I had something that's not on the agenda. I came as a citizen to thank the Parks Commission for its involvement and engagement in the attempt for the street vacation by Keith Locke, Diane Dillard. That was a significant piece of public property that the public was going to potentially have taken away from it. And when we started down on the road to resist it, there was a lot of people that expressed skepticism of whether anybody standing up against it would succeed. And I think by our thoughts and our actions and our expressions of our concern that the public was being deprived of something very valuable, it was ultimately dropped, but I think the council was very much moving in a direction to preserve that land for the public. I wanted to come forward as a citizen and say that things are not ended now and that things are just in the beginning. That I think we can see that if we don't protect our parks and we don't protect our public lands, that people will try to take them, to privatize them, to own them, and to deprive public access. And our librarian Brenda came forward and talked poignantly about how much that land can be used by folks with mobility issues and other issues to help them reach the riverfront view without going all the way downtown. And I think that we need to move forward with it. I cannot speak on behalf of the Planning Commission, but I do know that I think the Planning Commission and the Parks Commission work together against that. And I think we should prioritize and move the development of those areas forward, trying to get them on the front burner of the council or near the front burner. I know there are a lot of priorities, so that we don't end up in a situation in a year or 2 years where people are trying again to take away the land by saying it's not being used. And I would welcome any efforts of the Parks Commission in that regard. So thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Anyone else? Any topics off the floor? Doug?
Yeah, I just have just a comment for the record. I didn't get this fellow's last name. He didn't introduce himself other than, well, he didn't introduce himself, but you called him Steve. Who's this guy?
Steve Tosky, the planning
Tosky,
commission.
sorry.
Yes.
Commissioner, but I'm here as Steve Tosky, I'm here as an individual citizen, not on behalf of the
As a-
planning
as a
commission
citizen, yes.
on that topic.
Are you a resident of the town there, Steve?
Yes, I am. I'm a resident here of St. Helens, this beautiful place that we all call home, St. Helens.
Thank you. Are there other attendees that wish to speak? Hearing none, we're going to our new business. And the first item is addition of benches and trail extension to Nob Hill by Howard Blumenthal.
Okay, mainly, Sean, I thought I should bring it to you guys a little bit. Hopefully, I haven't heard, have we heard when the next bench may get in on top of that area? Shauna?
Could be a week or two. We're kind of finishing up the Halloween Town stuff that we're finishing up right now, getting that ready. So could be within a week or two.
As if it happens before a November work party, we were hoping to gravel between the little loop trail there and to where the bench is what
It should be.
It will be, yeah.
talking about. So that's mainly people thought that I should bring that to the Parks Commission to just let you know that we're gonna do a small, I don't know, 20 to 30 foot extension just to make a little gravel path that goes up to the new bench in that area. So hopefully nobody has any objections to that.
Now, you mentioned you had a grant. Is that part of that grant, that extension?
No, this is just something volunteers are gonna do. Hopefully the city can give us the gravel and then at our November work party, we'll build a little bit of trails. Some of our members like to, or some of our volunteers like to do trail work and some of them much rather plant or pull weeds. And so it's nice to be able to give people a lot of options on different jobs when we do it. So that's mainly it. The second bench did going down by the kiosk, and I've heard a lot of favorable comments about that. So probably slowly also working on, gonna think of looking for the fourth bench, maybe down by where the big fir tree, the only fir tree in the actual Nob Hill area where it goes up on the street. Means that maybe we'll get a bench in there someday also. So, but that's a little ways off yet.
There's a pile of gravel over there by the big shed. You know, where the, across from the, the sewage, where you got sewage and water, there's a big shed with there's a big pile of gravel.
Yeah, around kind of the left side of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all pea gravel and that's left over from the CRYC when they built that section of trail. But so far that trail, the usage that we're getting, it hasn't really necessarily had more gravel.
Well, you're talking about gravel above the bench.
Yeah, we probably bring it down from the 3rd Street trailhead. That's the closest trailhead. And I've got a place where we've been dumping gravel just a little bit there so that it's not in the way of the parking lot and that type of thing. That's where a lot of the gravel comes from. Comes in there.
Any other questions?
Less than 10 minutes.
Next item is number 4, crosswalk at Columbia and North Bradley. This is our little online. Okay, he might be a little late from work. So we're going to go on to the next one. This item number, let's see, 5:30, okay. So item number 5 is, I sent it in as the IGA, but the discussion on commissioner role and effective communication and the whole process. And I think that we need to look at that a little bit better. That's why I sent out what our municipal code was for the Parks and Recreation Commission. And we're handed this out when we apply and are accepted and appointed to the commission. But I think it's easy for us to stick it somewhere in your notebook and not take a real thorough look at it. And there's some things that I think that I could have done better at that too. So such as working with Public Works more on helping them get the funds from City Council to do some of our work that we would like to get done. And knowing what our budget is, what is our budget line? It can't be just zero all the time. There's got to be some kind of budget that they start out with in the fiscal year. And it would be nice to get an update on that. And so we know what we're working with and or what we might have to write a grant for. So that's what I wanted to start this discussion on. And then I found out after the fact about an IGA that was presented to the council. And I started looking at it and I thought, there is so much in there of what we already do or that we can do. So I'd like to just open it up for questions that you might have had at all on this.
I was wondering if there's, because we did our cleanups with Emily Martin. Was there another agreement prior to this one?
Yes, there was another agreement last year, but it did not come to the commission as well. So that's what made me think about this, that we need to review this really well and see what our responsibilities, duties, and powers are at this commission. So
I would say we did get last year, before we got advisement, I believe Emily came on and told us that it was happening, and Shauna presented about it, that the that the agreement
IGA.
was being discussed and everything. So I don't feel like we were left in the dark on that from my perspective. Like, I knew it was a conversation that the city was having with the Watershed Council, and that was all like being discussed.
and did you know that Godfrey Park is on there this year as well?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
you
I
did?
read it, and
Okay.
yeah,
Good.
and it was on there last year, and I was aware of that, so.
Yeah, and I'd like to take a look at all the parks and what, and write down and have an annual maybe report on what we've all asked for, or said that we needed, or where there is a problem area, so that we can keep track of it. And maybe at the end, I could write up something and submit it to Melissa on what we discussed, so it doesn't kind of get lost in the meeting. So we actually have a good list. And, we do present an annual report to the city council, but that sometimes you can talk about some of the things that have been discussed, but might not have a lot of the details and how we're going to go about doing that. So do we have any other questions or?
Are there specific areas of the agreement that you feel like are like should be removed and shouldn't be handled? And if so, what are your thoughts?
That's a
on that?
good question for everybody. When you look at the municipal code and what we're responsible for, and then you look at the IGA, I don't know if any of you have marked that up or.
I didn't mark it up,
Just,
but to me, it seemed like a beneficial agreement.
Yeah.
I mean, we can't do a site assessment. I mean, we can do site assessments, but we aren't experts. Right. Like, it's not my area of expertise that like Emily has. Like, the way that she goes and does a site assessment is gonna be much different than my version of a site assessment. So I feel like the stuff that they're doing adds value to the city. And I believe it was based off of the Scappoose, the agreement with Scappoose. Is that right, Shauna? Like, initially they had an agreement with Scappoose, and so St. Helens went to pursue something similar.
Yeah, so they had an agreement with Scappoose, or they do have an agreement, and they focus on the parks that are affecting the watershed. So Godfrey Park, McCormick were the two that they wanted to do a larger park so that they could handle that. And McCormick was the one that we saw had the most needs for invasive plants right now, and to help us come up with a 5-year plan for how we're gonna tackle it as a staff. Because right now we don't have the resources or the expertise as well with the spraying and stuff. And then Godfrey Park was a smaller park that they felt like they could do 2 parks. And then also, and Emily just joined as well, so she can explain more too, but also creating those volunteers, because yes, volunteers is a huge part of this, but we really need to create that structure and that base and the expectations and how we're gonna do those things with ivy, invasive plants, care, all of that. And Emily has the expertise on how to create that I mean, she's already done it with a lot of like Nob Hill. She has a big crew that comes in, and she's already talked to several folks around Godfrey, the pathways there, the church there, on how they can also utilize those resources. So when we first originally did the contract, it was a year ago, and with COVID and just me being new in it and Emily being new with this contract, we didn't get the full thing that we wanted to get done. And of course, they didn't charge us for nothing, that they only charge us for what they did. But we wanted to have another year to be able to do that. And so we did the IGA, just like we renewed the IGA with the Columbia County Work Group. That also expired as well. And Emily's online right now if you want to. Did you have something to add to that at all?
I think this is where I want to focus on the process too, and how it hasn't been adhered to. And we really need to start doing that. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that do a lot of good work, whether it's knowing about spraying or whether it's planting trees that are native, or maybe even doing some weeding, you know. There's a lot of volunteers. I got two the other day from the garden club that would like to come and do that. And one has kids, and I says, even if you came for an hour to one of the parks, you could go to all of them. But even if you have one park that you particularly like, you know, you can come there and go for an hour and pull some weeds, and, you know, that's a big help. But I think we also, each one of us, know our parks really well. And I've heard Dana express what she would like to do and what some of the problem areas are, and how can we go about doing that. So when we have that and we express it in our commission, then what we need to do from there is take it forward and see how we can get that done and not let it get buried in our minutes. And I think we could do better on that. So let's focus on the process. And one thing that jumped out is because we have a process, it went directly to the city council at the regular session. I always look at the work session, you know, and see, okay, what is somebody bringing forth, you know, about that? Because we do that even when we give an annual report. So let's focus on the process, and then what happened or what didn't happen, if you want to, on this particular IGA. So if you can't think of anything, that's fine. Did you have anything you wanted to add, Brendan?
Just, I guess the one thing, I'm not necessarily opposed to having this done, but I guess the part that bothered me is that it was done without this commission ever hearing about it, which I think goes back to and I expressed this before several months ago, but just a problem of communication, that there seems to be a lot that goes on in the parks that don't come before the Parks Commission. And so there's major things that happen in the parks that I don't know about until I read about it in the newspaper. And it just seems like even if things are being done, that maybe a monthly report saying this is what was done this month, or this is what we're planning on doing next month. I don't know. That's the part that bothered me, I think, the most, is that just it was done and passed, and $3,000, not a huge amount, but it is, I don't know. We've asked for things before, whether it's a sign or flowers for Memorial Day, and we're told there's no money in the budget. And going back to the municipal code, this commission should know about the parks budget, and I've never seen a parks budget. I've talks about the commission helping to decide what equipment the Parks Department needs. I have no idea about equipment. I don't know anything about that. So just reading this was kind of an eye-opener to me, that there's a lot of things that we should know about that we maybe don't know about. I think we're doing a lot of good as a commission, but I think we could probably be more effective if we, I don't know, if we were given the tools to do so. So that's just my thought.
And as far as development or equipment or anything, that's where Public Works comes in. And they have the expertise to know that, such as urban trail. And we need a budget for that, so we can find out from the Public Works department that, okay, if we want 20 of these posts painted and installed on the urban trail, then they could give us a rough estimate of how much that would cost, as well as any of the other items that we wanted at the urban trail. So, I don't know, another thing that worries me when something goes directly to the regular session is the question jumps out, did everybody, were they able to read it? And I know I had a question when I started looking at this. I thought there's signatories here. It said it should be signed on behalf of Scapa Bay Watershed Council by Dana Pritchard, coordinator, and on behalf of the city of St. Helens, Mohammed Zahir. And the agreement shall be effective as of the date written above. And I see underneath there, Scapa Bay Watershed Council, Andy Maggie, coordinator, and then Rick Shull. So it doesn't all match up. And the formal agreement from last year ended in, let's see here, June, I believe it was, or July. Yeah, okay. June 30th. So it looks like it was kind of a cut and paste of that, but yet there was a breach in that time. So these are only a few things that I'm noticing.
So is this the type of document, agreement, et cetera, that should be filtered through and processed through all overseeing commissions prior to going to city council for final agreement?
Something like this would be Parks and Recreation Commission. And if anybody's going to be signing the agreement, it seems like they would have comments or would be there to give their perspective.
Their input,
on it,
right.
and they're important, yeah.
And
Yes.
otherwise kind of proof it
Yes.
and have opportunity at least for comment or
Right.
otherwise other correction. And
Exactly.
so has this happened before, like with a previous agreement? Were you just notified of it, or were you allowed to comment, edit, otherwise put input?
The last time it came here, from what I recall, we were told it was happening and the discussion was happening. It wasn't a thing where we had to review it before it went to city council. It was like, hey, heads up, we're doing this partnership that we're working on and gonna implement.
But we all didn't have discussion on
But
it.
you feel that it should have been
But
discussed?
if
Well, if
we
you look
wanted
at
to
the-
discuss it, we could have. I mean, it was brought to us, and if we wanted to see it, we could have said, we'd like to see it and review it before it happens, and we didn't do that, which
Oh,
maybe we should have. I don't know.
Mhm.
But it was up to, I think, all of us to say that we want to see it, and we didn't.
It's like, almost like it already happened, so we were getting information, but
No,
That's-
they
but-
we were told about it when the discussions were happening. Like, it wasn't, if I recall correctly, it wasn't when it was done and we were told that this is now in place. It was like, these conversations are happening. We're gonna work on this agreement going forward. So.
But this year, none of that
Go back and
discussion
look at
happened.
it and see if that's what truly
I
happened.
just want to clarify, because I think I echo similar comments where this is something that I would have loved to have at least been able to review ahead of time. There does look like there's proofreading, just errors that are clerical in nature, but on the commission, these are the kind of things that we should be aware of, that we should be able to comment on. I'm very much appreciative of the relationship that we have with the Scapa Bay watershed, and they bring so much to our community and to our parks, and this is wonderful thing to have. But I agree that conversations should be had, and especially if it's, official agreements that our commission technically is involved with or otherwise oversees, we as the commission should have access to that ahead of time rather than it just going through. So how can we make sure that happens in the future? Because we can't do it in the past, we can't change last week, but this is a good example of something that that we should work on the communication kind of barriers that is a repeat problem.
Mhm. So all the people, it seems like that are part of, oh, sorry, Howard.
Some point I wanted to make a couple of comments on it, and that is that I do appreciate everything that the Watershed Council does do in these agreements, there, I do wish we would have had more communication. I know that I had an idea that there was something going through. I didn't realize it was so extensive because I believe I did mention last meeting that there was an IGA agreement that was going to be being turned in because there was a small amount, $150 that we'd gotten a grant from an anonymous donor. And so there was a small amount in there for Emily to oversee the spot spraying in the park. And that may have pushed it forward a little faster than what it normally would have gone because we were getting in a time crunch contracts, trying to get spraying done before Halloween Town. So that could have been a little bit of it, but we probably should have known a little bit more beforehand if it was this extensive.
Sure.
But I really enjoy that we are partnering with the Watershed Council. They provide an expertise that city staff at this time just doesn't have in the way of nature areas and plants and spot spraying and that type of thing.
And I have a comment. It's kind of a procedural thing, I guess, for Tori. So if there's something to be done in the park, a routine thing, let's take Columbia Botanical Gardens. There's a lot of poison oak there. And a few years ago, I sprayed it, the part along the trail, and Emily says, no, we want to leave the part there because it's good habitat for birds and animals, and they eat the seeds and all this sort of thing. But the question I have, if there's just routine maintenance that needs to be done, let's say Troy goes through a park and he says, hey, we need to get rid of these blackberries. We need to cut down this old dead tree. That sort of thing doesn't need to come to us,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
No, I'm talking about how you oversee the botanical gardens and you know what you would like to see gone there, such as blackberries. I mean, we sprayed blackberries at Dalton by donation last November, and they're all back again. So we won't be doing that again. We're going to be clearing out and using work parties because we have access to volunteers to do that. So they'll be cutting the trails and keeping those open, but we're not going to go anywhere.
Well, I'm talking about the $3,000. So if the city staff wants to use that money, routine maintenance, they don't need to come to us.
I think any agreement, when it involves, we have been assigned to these parks, and we're on the commission. And we've got this municipal code that you've read. And so, yeah, anything big like that, or that's gonna take money, especially money, because we don't know what the budget is too, that's another thing. But it should come to the commission, it's not difficult.
So any money that's being spent out of that $3,000 needs to be approved by the commission first, is what you're
It should
saying?
be, discussed and see what is gonna be done, because there's been signs asked for during the year. There's been a number of different things that hasn't happened, such as, baseball parks, baseball diamonds being graded, or a lot of things that are not hard. Wouldn't take a lot of money, but we need to be working with Parks, the director of Public Works, too, because they have the equipment and the means to do that. And I'd like to know, would you like to say anything since your name is on here about this IGA?
I think great discussion, first of all. Thank you for inviting me today. It sounds like it's definitely a miscommunication kind of situation where the commission should be aware of any IGAs that happens between, the city and stuff. I don't think the control over the money should be really monitored. That's part of the agreement. I think Emily Martin does a great job with this specific agreement, but should be communicated better moving forward, reviewed by the commission and have an idea if there is any, specific areas that you'd like to be, since you're in the field, more than anybody else when it comes to this stuff. To be addressed, maybe an opportunity for comments prior to going to council for approval.
I have another couple, talking about this, specific, like, do we need to approve, the city staff doing something? So when the Scappoose Bay watershed does a project, what is kind of the typical cost of that?
It depends, so what this specific agreement is supporting our team, like some of the certificates to spray. This is kind of a substitute service that comes from watershed. To help them do that since we didn't have the certification.
So how much is that?
Yeah, I don't know.
If you look on that sheet, it talks about labor. Yeah, there's labor.
An hour.
Do you mind?
Shed some light.
Is she gonna be doing the spraying, or is an outside,
You oversaw that.
not overseas, is she spraying? Is she doing the spraying?
Yeah. Emily?
To answer the question, no. So in the case of the Nob Hill Spray Project, what we did was we hired a contractor to come in and do the spray treatment. We also oversaw, in this case, this IGA does not cover any of my time or materials to do spray treatments. The focus of this year's IGA is really to begin focusing on building partnerships and combining resources so that we can begin to look at how to better manage the health of the watershed and the health of the natural systems within these parks to the best of our abilities. There's no money in there for spray treatments outside of covering my time to oversee the spray treatment at Nob Hill Nature Park and to have a contractor come in to give an assessment to say, this is how much money it would cost to remove all of this blackberry along Milton Creek and McCormick Park. This is how much money it would take and how many years it would take to remove all of the ivy in the canyon at Godfrey Park.
So this IGA serves as, there is a lot of in-kind contribution from the watershed as well, volunteer time. So I think the materials cost of this, there's a lot of basically volunteer work and help the city with this. It's a partnership.
So are we saying that anytime that any of this money is used for the IGA, it should come towards the commission before it's done? Or is that decision by the city staff?
I'll defer to Ms. Khan, she oversees the Parks and Rec.
Now, in the municipal code, it's there too. It's pretty explicit what needs to be, what we're responsible for, what should come before the commission.
Well, does this come before the commission or not?
Well, I say with the IGA, with it broken down with what it will be used for, that it would not come before the commission to approve every line item that's being done, since it's lined out in here what the expectations are, what the agreement is.
Rachel, I don't know, or
I agree with you. The cost, once it's set up, it should not be. It's the amount is decided in advance, whether it's 3,000, could be 1,000, could be whatever the city is willing, depending on the budget agreement, right? That can be renewed at 0, at 1,000, at 5, whatever the city can afford, and the type of services that is offered by the watershed. Once that's approved from there, the tasks and the costs allocated to that, it's subjective.
I agree with that. That's the way I feel too.
Just to kind of to talk really quick about the previous agreement was 5,000, and I believe we did about $2,000 worth of work, so we just did. So this is basically a carryover from that agreement as well. And we had saved some money because, as Lynn had spoke about the signs and stuff, those are at a completely different budget line item. And I can print you all budgets to see, but this is out of our professional services line item, which means the work crew that comes, electricians, people that are coming and doing a service for us. Signs can't be purchased out of this one. The work crew, we didn't get to use them a lot this year because of COVID and them not being there. So we've saved some money there, and we thought this would be a good use to kind of beef up this part of it to get McCormick Park and Godfrey
Well, I think
into a capable level.
overall though, we should have some sort of idea of what you're gonna do. I'm not saying, you say it could cost us much, we're not gonna say no, but we'd like to know what we're doing And that
Yes.
way people ask us, we don't, I don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, and I hear that. And so my question, and Rachel's here for that too, is we do a lot of IGAs. We have one with the school district. We have one with Main Street and all that. And so we would be pushing all of those
I
to,
just think the communication with us would be, important, so that way we can explain to people what's going on too. So I'm not gonna say, no, you can't do it, it's just, oh, we know what's going on, okay, thank you.
yes, and that's with our reports, but yes.
And I've got another question too, and that is the 3,000 for this, did it come from the parks budget or was it from the general fund of the city?
So the parks budget is from the general fund and we have an allocated amount every year that's broken down line item to say what we're thinking we're gonna spend the money on. So this is through now what's the parks budget, which comes from the general fund. And the $3,000 is coming from our professional service line item in the parks budget.
Yeah, and if I could just offer kind of on roles and responsibilities. You are the best advocates for our Parks and Recreation Department. And in this role, you very much set the policy tone at the top. We would like to reduce invasive species, right? And you advocate with council for there to be resources for that. And then it is to staff to implement. I think, yeah, communication can definitely be improved because you are the best advocates we have for our Parks and Recreation. So when there are, IGA's opportunities to celebrate partnership, opportunities to know what volunteer work crews are doing, that type of thing all needs to be at this table. And that overall policy direction should be. I would encourage you to stay out of the weeds of like crochet class must happen on Tuesday morning at the rec center. So just a way to think about it, that you're the overall advocate to set the policy direction and do that budget advocacy. Does that make sense?
It does, I just, when we do parks, all different stuff, we all talk about that, we all know what's gonna happen, when it's gonna happen, how it's gonna happen. Sometimes you guys are doing stuff, we don't even know what's going on.
Yeah, and particularly something like this where it's a continuation, right? And it's kind of, it feels kind of out of nowhere, right? So I think new agreements and new partnerships are definitely for this group.
This is great, excellent. And to your point, you're absolutely right. You guys should be in the know, say, for example, Emily or the team from the IG did some work. They should come and present, hey, last month we did X, Y, and Z. That's the value that we bring through this IGA, whether it's through a report monthly or, whenever the service is produced. Because
Can they come like a month in advance, say, hey, next month we're doing this.
absolutely.
We might even be able to get volunteers to help them.
Yeah.
Right. And I think Emily might.
And I would like to say, I'm more than happy to continue to expand on the communication I have been doing with the intergovernment agreement. You are all the experts of your parks. I have knowledge and expertise, but I'm a student as much as I am a teacher. You've loved these parks longer than I have been in my position. So yes, I'm more than happy to report on my own activities within the IGA and within the parks to help continue the conversation of what is happening, what is needed for these parks, and how can we overlap resources so that we are able to do what we need to do for the parks and the community.
I have a question. Since I've joined the commission, and I know we kind of reviewed the old master plan and whatnot, and I know that some things have been done and some things haven't, and there's new wants and wishes and changes all the time, seasonal, all the things. Would it be possible to request a bit of a detailed budget plan that includes our current budget, our current planned big activities or installations, et cetera, for the next year? That way I can get a little more understanding of the little things that are for sure gonna be taken care of, the bigger things that you guys are hoping to get to within the next calendar year, and then kind of maybe the next year or two after that as well. Because for me, it would be very helpful. I like kind of checking my plan of action, and if I have a big goal, I'd like to know what else is happening on that way, so that I don't waste my time putting attention towards things that are already for sure happening or for sure not going to happen in the next couple of years, because it would make my efforts more fruitful. So at our next meeting maybe, or sometime soon, we have a pretty good breakdown of what that looks like currently.
Just heads up for the budget questions that I hear a lot of people say, we don't know what's in the budget. So the budget is public knowledge, it's on the city website. There's multiple steps that is publicly available through the discussion, the adoption. And it's available 24/7. You can look by department, by, segment, and know exactly how much each department has and what's allocated in a line item. And through the process, it's a good place also to be in those committees, right? Budget committees, you can come as an audience, you can participate, ask questions, and if you have an input like for specific projects, this is a good time to go for that. And yeah, those should all be available. Obviously, the Parks and Rec manager can provide more details as needed. But yeah, all this stuff.
Yeah, and what you were saying, Dana, Tori and I, one of our plans that we've talked about in this commission several times too, is during the fall and winter is kind of our not really downtime, but time where we have a little bit more time to go around to the parks and we're not just trying to keep up with the lawn mowing and that sort of thing. And we are making a CIP project plan of things and then seeing where that falls within grants, things. So yes, I can definitely, once we have that information available, because there's a lot of things that just need maintenance or that need to be torn down or things like that. And that's what we're really focusing on this next year instead of adding new stuff, taking care of the stuff that we have already.
Again, I want to reiterate the responsibilities, powers, and duties of this commission. And it's the Parks and Recreation Commission shall have the power to act in an advisory capacity to the City Council on all matters pertaining to the operation, planning, development, improvement, beautification, equipment and maintenance of public parks, trails, public bicycle and or pedestrian ways, vacant park properties, public squares, public recreational facilities, and publicly accessible buildings and associated grounds. The Parks and Recreation Commission shall have authority, and then it has 1 through 8. So please read those again, that we need to know this information. I, for one, am going to have talked with the SWCD to be partnering with us. I have 3 different grants that I'm looking at. So it's not just going to be for Dalton, it's going to be for all the parks and not just a couple. So I just want to put that out there that that's what I'm going to be doing. And Shauna will be CC'd and all that information. And so that we can start doing all the things that we'd like to do. Some parks don't need spraying. Some parks like Knock Hill and maybe Godfrey. They've got a lot of ivy, I know that. And you have $500 too to get that done. But education, I do have someone on the city council that as soon as Dalton is open, is going to continue with those monthly educational walks for children and their families or all adults. We have other teachers in the area too that are very environmentally aware and have background that we can use. There is a myriad of opportunities for us that we can all work together on. So, and I want to say tools are nice for people that have never worked in their garden before, but most people, I've never found one volunteer that didn't have their own tools when they came to work in the parks. So
A lot of people use their shovels at Nob Hill for planting, so.
So are there any other questions or concerns?
Question. It was before I was on the commission even. It's been several years, but I believe it was when Sue was still here. Somebody from the city, I believe it was somebody from the Parks Department, was pursuing a certification in spraying. Did that go away, or is that still in the process? Do we know, or is that not being discussed anymore?
Still in the process. I mean, with the schooling, with everything was shut down, everything kind of just went on the back burner for a while. I mean, everybody kind of knows with everything that happened, it just kind of went on the back burner for a while. But it's definitely on the focus.
I actually looked at that online and you can get your certificate for $58 and another 50 to get started.
Mhm.
So that's a little over $100, so, but you can do it online. And there's help here. Besides Emily, I know that the extension office offered help.
Mhm.
You know, if you had questions on those too, the SWCD. So that'd be, I think that's a really good
So do we,
thing to
is
pursue.
there, nobody on the city right now has a certification to spray, is that correct, or?
We can spray in some
We can
spots,
backpack spray, we can use power sprays.
Yeah. and we don't have a power sprayer either, so that would be another thing that we'd have to, if we
Yeah,
get
we-
certified for it, we would
Is that a long process, or is it?
get a power
get a
sprayer.
certification?
A lot of tests, booklets to read, I mean, it's not something you can just like, oh, get it real quick. Proctored exam, you gotta go in, you gotta pass 2 different ones, you have to get a right-of-way spraying, you want to spray by waterways, you gotta get a whole different one. There's 8 different certifications.
Right, and there is help out there though, too,
Yeah.
if you wanted to do that, you know, or maybe somebody at Public Works.
I think it would be beneficial to have somebody that had that ability.
I think it could save us probably thousands of dollars. I know just doing the area that we did, it was 650. So,
The other nice thing though is that, not to say you don't know about all the native plants, but some of the crews that Emily will use, they're restoration people. They know their plants, they know not to pull the spray on to certain things, which I imagine once we had somebody, they would learn fairly quickly, but still the people that Emily's been using are qualified in these types of things. And spraying, I was a little shocked when we sprayed for poison oak though. It was beginning of the summer in the botanical park, because we'd always been under the thing that you wanted to spray it at the end of the year, because in the spring, there's a lot more collateral damage, because a lot of your native plants are up in the spring. And if you wait more till about this time of the year, poison oak especially, much more effective to do it later in the year. You don't have the collateral damage of killing off a lot of things. A lot of things now are dormant. So there's a big learning curve in knowing the correct time to do spraying. Yes, spraying is, you know, you just go out there and do it, but to be delicate about it, especially if you're in a nature area, there's a little bit of finesse that needs to be done.
yeah,
Something to think of. That's one of the good things about the Watershed Council is that they bring that expertise to us.
used Lona Pierce for the Dalton, she's excellent too.
Mm-hmm.
But, so we have the signatories as Dana Pritchard, is that correct?
No.
Okay,
Sandy,
and
Andy,
I
Megra,
didn't see Mohammed Zahir, Director of Public Works on there. As a signatory.
For
For the
I think it
IGA.
just got carried over from the year before, and those 2 things were incorrect in the document, so we'll need to do an amendment to it. Mohammed's no longer over parks or recreation, and
No.
he's a great partner with it, but it should have been.
It's on behalf of the city.
Okay, so it should have been Andy and then Rick, I think, were the people that should have been the signatures on there.
And Andy Maggie will be the coordinator. That will do
Oh.
it.
He was shy, or,
actually Andy is
but
transition right now. Andy has gotten a really much better job and we're an advocate for somebody else. So actually, in the middle of this month, our coordinator is stepping down. So we're actually in the process right now of looking for new watershed coordinators. Anybody knows anybody qualified, we're about ready to start putting out information that we are looking for a new coordinator for the Watershed Council.
So this isn't really correct then,
Well, it is. He's acting coordinator right now.
but he's listed on here as being responsible with Emily for some things on the back.
Oh, yeah.
project. Okay,
Well, I would imagine it just carries over to whoever is the next coordinator with.
if they would like that.
I don't think there's a problem there. Well, the organizations have people move on in the middle of agreements.
But it has to be, you have to be careful when you're running up an IGA with a city,
Mhm.
you know, and two of the signatories aren't gonna be here then.
You make a good point, it should be updated, obviously, with the web contact and signature, because the responsibility falls, of course.
And if it is updated, I'd like some of our concerns to be noted and maybe scratched off of this, depending on what they can read in the municipal code and what we're responsible for. Because all of us have done a lot of that work. I don't know.
Are there specific items on here that you're saying should be crossed out? And if so, can you tell us what the items? you think should be
Yeah,
crossed
Lynn,
out?
are you looking to ask for like an amendment in the agreement itself?
Or terminate it and start over with the correct signatories, the people that are really gonna be involved. And with, when they mention public works, then Director Zahira's signature. And because this came with no signatures really, only listed. And I think we, as I was trying to point out in some of this, but you all needed to read this as well, that there's probably all of this is what we are responsible for, and that we do, and we have access to have somebody help us with that, whether it's a volunteer or a professional in the city.
I don't think
With
we can do all of
SWCD.
This is not stuff that we're responsible for as commission members. We're not responsible for a site assessment and 5-year management plan related to watershed and the parks that impact the watershed. Like, this is very specific to their expertise. Like, I don't see this as overlapping with the work that we're responsible for as a commission. And if so, I'd like to know which, like, what number and letter you're thinking should be crossed out on these, because I don't see that.
I have no problems with
I
any
don't
of
have any
this.
concerns
I
with
agree,
the.
she works directly with us and partners, and we benefit from their support, their expertise and their money. I agree that there's clerical errors that should be attended to. However, to be honest, I don't know that at this time, there's anything that I would support making an amendment to for the current agreement. But I would appreciate the ability to review and make comments ahead of time prior to future agreements. I think that would be fair.
Another thing I was concerned about is a 5-year plan. What is in that plan?
Well, that's kind of what I was asking
Yeah,
earlier.
the 5-year plan is for them to,
We'd be part of that.
it doesn't say you wouldn't be, I mean, you
Right.
wouldn't necessarily not be part of it. This is a 5-year plan that we're doing to assess the watershed areas and see how we can go forth with creating a sustainable plan for the next 5 years. And that would be something that we would communicate with you all to let you know what the report comes back that Emily's working on with her contractors.
When I read
Same type
this,
of thing that, sorry, that Tori and I are doing with the CIP plan, when we go around and look at the buildings that need to be taken down, the buildings that need more visual eyes on them, that sort of thing will be a 5-year plan, so we can start working towards those things as well.
when I read this, I kind of feel the same way that most of us feel here, that I thought this was really pretty good. I mean, I didn't have any real issues with it. I totally agree that, you know, the signatures and everything, you know, that needs to be updated. I dealt with another organization once that for like 15 or 20 years before they ever did anything. But those things need to be cleared up. And the other thing is that we've all said numerous times is that, you know, there just needs to be better communication, you know, both ways. But do we need to make an amendment or a motion or anything like that?
Well, what is the advice it would give?
Well, I'll make an motion that we accept the intergovernment agreement as it is written, with the exception of the signers on the bottom. That needs to be updated and made current.
So you all are aware, you're willing to have somebody else do a 5-year plan for all of our parks.
It's not for
Or natural areas
all
is
of our
what they
parks,
said
it's
too.
for
Two.
McCormick
And
and
natural,
Godfrey Park.
it says natural areas as well. And what are the natural areas?
So the natural areas that we're focusing on right now are Godfrey and McCormick Park. Emily, can you? The other ones that were in that.
I can. So when I use the phrase natural areas, I mean some of the areas within the parks that are what we consider to be natural areas. The stream corridor, any area that has native plant communities and is considered a habitat of some kind, whether it be a stream, a woodland. It was a way to differentiate. I'm not going to take care of or talk about how we can improve the planter boxes at McCormick Park, because that's not part of the habitat or natural areas that are part of the McCormick Park area. We wanted to make sure that it was clear we're helping with the stream, we're helping with the upland habitat, and we're helping with the landscape that impacts our watershed health and thus enables us to be strategic when it comes to making sure that we concentrate on the areas that fall into what we consider as part of our watershed priority areas.
So getting back to what Lynn was saying here and what Emily's, it's this, a site assessment and 5-year management plan developed for McCormick Park and Godfrey Park. Definitely, Emily and the watershed board, they have the expertise to do that, the people to do that. So they come up with a plan. That plan should, like we said, there should be communication. It didn't say implementing the plan, it
No,
said
it's not
developing the plan. So I think before the plan is implemented, that needs to be discussed. And, Emily and her group right now are the expertise, and they come and tell us what they're doing. And then we, some of us have expertise in those areas too, and we have feelings and opinions and things like that. But I think they should be the one who develops the plan, and before the plan is implemented, it needs to be brought to us and discussed.
And it's a plan that will be something that staff can help sustain that plan, carry out that plan with help from contractors as needed as well. And that's when we go to the budget cycle and say, hey, we have this 5-year plan. Year 1 says we need $10,000 to do X, Y, Z if we're gonna do this plan. And then we have the dollar figures for it, the plan by experts who do this type of work on the watershed area.
So to answer your question, Lynn, yes, I feel incredibly comfortable allowing them to do that as it is listed, especially if the communication avenues stay open. And I think that they are a vital resource and that their actions will benefit our parks as it is currently agreed to.
There's a motion on,
Watersheds.
there's a
Not
motion,
just our parks.
Yeah, absolutely, the watersheds.
there's a motion on the floor. Are we discussing that?
I have another question. How many people from the Watershed Council will be working on this?
So at this point, I'm probably going to be the main person from the Watershed Council working on this. I can foresee that there will be conversations with our board president and with some of the other members about the different elements that might go into what we determine to be part of the necessary changes. But a lot of the other consultations will be with people like Ash Creek Forest Management. They're a restoration company that I was employed with at one time, whom I still hold in very high regard, possibly with the local engineering firm, Lower Columbia River Watershed Council, to get some questions answered about if we remove all the ivy in the canyon at Godfrey Park, what's the risk of sedimentation loss? What do we need to do to make sure that we have strategies in place to minimize the damage that's done as a result of removing the weeds while also replanting? But to stay back with your question, Lynn, I'm probably going to be the main person from the Watershed Council working on this.
And that's full-time?
No, I currently work 20 hours and I try to split my time between the nursery and the projects to the best of my ability. So Some weeks it might be 10 hours, some weeks it might be more than that. It's going to depend on what's happening in the nursery, what's happening with the projects, and what's happening with any of the watershed council duties that I have. But my plan is to try to put some time into the Godfrey, McCormick, and Scappoose parks following our plant sale on October 8th.
So how much do these contractors that you're talking about charge an hour?
It varies depending on what task you have them do. Now, in the case of having them do a site assessment and just give you a bid, Ash Creek nor Native Plantscapes Northwest have never charged me for the time it took to show their project managers or crew leaders the site and then say, this is what project I'd like you to have done. Can you tell me how much you think it might be? The cost only comes about when a contract is developed, signed upon, agreed on, and then the crew actually goes in to do the work. At least that's how it's been in my experience so far.
So we don't have an approximate amount of how much all this might cost.
$3,000 right here.
Yeah, they're limited to
It shows
2,000.
right here.
We cannot go over that, and the billable hours that she would charge for, just like the first year we did, she charged us for her billable hours, so it wasn't a 40-hour work week, but if she did 3 hours this month and 10 hours the next month, that's what was charged. As far as contractor work, that's the 5-year plan that we're coming up with, and that's what we would pay in addition to this if we decided to move forward with different things or have our park staff do it if they had the skill set to do it. But this is, so no, it's not included in this.
So can you explain to us what the professional services fund is? I didn't even know we had something like that.
Yeah, so with the budget items, they're broken down into different types of funds. So there's a materials fund that pays for like our toilet paper, pretty much any sort of materials, hard materials that we get. And then we have like professional training, like if we do any trainings, we have a allocation for what kind of trainings we do and what that looks like. Our professional services captures like if we have an electrician come out to do stuff at the bathrooms, rewire things because we don't do those things in-house. If somebody comes and fixes our air conditioning, if we're doing contract agreements with Scappoose Bay Watershed or anybody that would be a professional service that they're doing like a service for us, not getting like a sign would come out of materials and supplies. And then we have a fuel fund for how much money we can spend on fuel each. So there's probably, gosh, I want to say there's at least 15 to 20 different line items that we have to do. And then that totals our total budget, what we're allowed to spend for the year. That does come out of the general fund.
That's nice to know that we have something like that we might be able to use in the future. Any other questions? So does anybody want to make a motion on this?
We had a motion and we discussed it.
And the motion is,
The motion was to accept the intergovernment agreement as stated, except for, updating the people who signed the agreement so that that's legally.
So the people that signed is okay. It's just that last little paragraph there before the signatures.
Well, ever how it's gonna be changed.
Yeah.
You change one or change the other, you change both or
Well, the other
change
people-
neither,
Correct.
But yeah, that needs to be done. And the other thing, I don't know how to put this in motion, and this is one of the things I know that Lynn and a lot of people are here, is that, once the plan is developed, there needs to be better communication. I don't think we can put that into a motion. But the motion was to accept the intergovernmental agreement as written, except for changing the last section that has about who's signing it.
A second. Oh, go ahead. Go for it. I second.
Also, I wanted to ask, I have one more thing, is should we have the new coordinator sign it? When you get a new coordinator, shouldn't they?
Yeah,
If this is dated August 17th, that seems a.
Yeah, I don't think we may not have a new coordinator until the first of the year, so at this time I would.
We can look, and there will be probably amendments to this, like when, because when we first, I believe, did this contract is when you did the work over at Dalton Lake with Coos Bay Watershed. And that part was in the contract as well, because anytime they're doing something with us that we're exchanging money or that sort of thing, it enters into this IGA. So it could be amended if Howard is having another spray thing, that is included in here. So any type of work that Coos Bay Watershed is doing for us, that money is being exchanged, it needs to be in the intergovernment agreements. If that makes sense to you all.
We all are also with the Watershed Council, we are gonna have an interim watershed coordinator till we do get a new person. And that's gonna be Pat Welly, a past watershed coordinator. She was just before Dana Pritchard, so she's gonna fill in for us. So we still have people there that are more than adequate to sign in the name of the Watershed Council.
Okay,
What would it take to actually put in that, that we need to review before the 5-year plan?
I think it makes sense to put it in the intergovernmental agreement.
So,
I don't think so, because it's an agreement between the Watershed Council and the city of St. Helens for these services. It's more just a communication thing to come back to us.
I think we've made that pretty clear, and
Yeah.
they've also made it pretty clear they would communicate with us better.
what our responsibilities are. That's why I brought that up. So there was a motion and a second. And you seconded.
I seconded. We fought over it and I won. I threw some
victor.
punches.
I'm a Cowboy fan.
Too bad.
Okay, I'm gonna need to change the next item on the agenda.
We need to
Are we gonna
vote.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, we do need a vote. Yeah. Anybody else want, does anybody have any discussion at all on this? Okay. So we've had a motion and it was seconded. Now we're gonna have a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? The intergovernmental agreement has been approved. And the next item of business is HB 3115, because one of our speakers,
Skipping a couple.
no, we have to, because one of our speakers has to leave by 5:30
Okay,
for that, so we're gonna move that up.
okay.
Very kindly accommodating my schedule, and I
Okay.
really pass to Commissioner Towski because I don't, and I can kind of set the stage a little bit unless you.
I'm ready to go.
All right, I see that you're ready to go.
Thank you.
And-
I've already facilitated one meeting and facilitating many more.
Yes, yes, and if I can, I will make a couple of comments on this topic, right? If the city's lens here, we were really looking at public space, right? How we use public space and how it accommodates everyone. Make sure it can accommodate everyone. We work very closely with our community partners here, including Columbia Community Mental Health Community Action Team. The relationships are strong. Referrals are very easy for folks who need services. And recently, over years and currently, shelter space is available in our community. So it's really important that folks experiencing homelessness do have places to turn here in St. Helens.
And I would, so my name is Steve Toski, and I'm an attorney both in licensed in Oregon and in California. And I've spent quite a bit of time going over HB 3115. I've read the law. I've read HB 3124, which is another kind of law about campgrounds and being, and I've reviewed the law about how to essentially how to exempt the city from the effect of HB 315. I met with the city prosecutor. I've talked to the attorneys at the city of Grants Pass. I've read the Martin v. Boise decision. I read the Harvard Law Review Journal on Martin v. Boise article. I've read the Grants Pass decision, and I've read the briefing on the Grants Pass case. So I've spent a lot of time preparing and became very concerned, my legal mind being very concerned about the effect of HB 3115, what it really does, how it really potentially can affect a city like St. Helens, and what we can do to protect ourselves from the consequences of not doing a proper strategy as far as how we implement HB 3115. And I will echo what Rachel has said, and I want to make sure we start with that. And that is about our community here in St. Helens. I don't think any community has been rocked by financial times being hard than our city, and we've gotten through them. And one thing that we've always done is we've helped our own and we've helped our people. People here have resources. I just got back from the food bank auction and fundraising. We feed like 14,000 people, and there's a lot of preparation of that food that goes out. We have our mental health facilities, and we have our crisis centers. When our people need help, we are there to help them. We're there to help give them a hand. They have a place to go. And this is not a law about our people. This law is 3115. There are other communities that have not taken as stringent of a policy as St. Helens had, and that is, if you are visiting our city and you are here coming through, there are places where you can go and you can camp and you can do what you want to do, and there are places you can't. And we've enforced those laws. We've done a lot of work enforcing our desire that everyone who is in St. Helens is treated equally. And that is, everyone has a right to be in certain places at certain times, and everyone has a right to do certain things at certain times. But there are certain places that we want to make sure everyone can enjoy. And that's our public places. That's our parks, where people go to relax. Families go to have their children play on the playgrounds, to play ball. We've got our beautiful Frisbee golf course at McCormick Park. I was there the other day, walking around McCormick Park. I was there at the War Memorial, where you've got our veterans that are being honored there. And right next to there are people playing Frisbee golf, enjoying their days. And there are rules about what you can and can't do in that park. You're not supposed to be doing drugs. You're not supposed to be laying needles around. You're not supposed to be camping out. You're not supposed to be throwing garbage around. And there's a reason for that, because people who don't follow the rules make it so anyone else and everyone else can't enjoy the facilities. And that's why the rules are there in the first place. And we have laws that we enforce, and we have enforced to, we had a big problem with Sand Island. And the city dealt with that and took care of that. And now we've got a great facility there. We had problems on the docks, and the city took care of that. When people are in town here and they appear to need help, our law enforcement engages with them and appropriately funnels them to where they need to go. Sometimes that may be jail, but most of the time it's someplace else. HB 3115 is a law that purportedly was a reaction to the federal case of Martin v. Boise, which I will talk about at the end of my presentation. But what the effect of HB 3115 is, it really is designed to cripple the ability of cities like St. Helens to manage their public spaces, so that the folks who just want to come and do whatever they want here can do it. And it's not only about St. Helens, it's about other cities too. And it is carefully implemented to attack cities in two ways. One is there's the criminal aspect of 3115. And what 3115 does on the criminal aspect, it provides an affirmative defense against criminal prosecution of city and county laws for sitting, lying, sleeping, or keeping warm and dry outdoors on public property by creating an affirmative defense that the law is not objectively reasonable. Reasonable shall be determined based upon the totality of the circumstances, including but not limited to the impact of the law on persons experiencing homelessness. So I've been practicing law for 34 years. I passed 2 bar exams. I went to law school for 3 years. I cannot think of another law that's ever been written in a criminal context that allows a person being charged with a law violation to not only challenge their guilt or innocence of whether they violated the law, but actually to challenge the reasonableness of the law itself. So you could kind of put that into any law you want on the books. Choose any law that comes to your mind. And imagine the prosecution has to already prove that law beyond, like shoplifting, parking anywhere, doing things that you shouldn't be doing, robbing, who knows what. These are things against the law that the prosecution has the burden of proving beyond a reasonable doubt that the person violated the law. And if they do violate the law and the jury finds that unanimously, then there's a guilty verdict and the person then has the consequences of the law. What HB 3115 allows people who are charged with violating the law to do is to actually challenge the law itself as a defense and say, yeah, I was camping in Nob Hill Park, and but I don't think that's a reasonable law. It's not reasonable for people experiencing homelessness. And the reasonable shall be determined on the totality of the circumstances, including but not limited to the impact of the law on persons experiencing homelessness. And the law is not objectively reasonable. So, okay, let's talk about reasonableness. You know, we can all sit here and think about anything like what's reasonable and not reasonable. You know, is it reasonable to go to bed after 9 o'clock at night? Is it reasonable to drink more than 3 beers? Is it reasonable to, there's a lot of things that we can all think of what's reasonable, and all of us are going to have a different opinion. That, you know, what's reasonable to me may not be reasonable to Howard, may not be reasonable to anybody else here in the room. It may be reason, 5 people may think it's reasonable and 5 people may think it's not. And 4 people may say, I have no idea. Reasonableness, to put an objective standard on reasonableness, I've never seen that in the law either. So we have this very strange law, in my experience, something that an animal that is like never existed before. You have this animal that is not only allows a person charged with a criminal violation to say the law is itself unreasonable. The prosecution is put in the position of having to prove that it's objectively reasonable. And so this is, let's just say, essentially it's a law that is going to make it very difficult to prosecute sleeping, lying, keeping dry ordinances. And so, so that's that piece of the law. Let me see, I think which button do I press? I think it's this one. This one, this one. Oh, okay. The second aspect of the law is the law creates a civil cause of action. It creates a cause of action for lawsuits attacking city and county laws for sitting, lying, sleeping, or keeping warm and dry by persons experiencing homelessness. So if I'm experiencing, whatever that means, by the way, they don't define it, you know, so it's a person who's mentally ill, right? So you got a person who's mentally ill that just, you know, cannot function, and they live on the streets because frankly we aren't taking care of our mentally ill as we should. I think a lot of people would agree with that. We certainly are putting a lot of effort, but we put a lot more in. These people are sick. But you know, the person who wants to be homeless because they don't want to spend any money on rent, they want to spend all their money on drugs, and they want to live on the streets, or people are just, you know, they're free spirits. I don't want to live in a house. Or maybe there's people that really fell on hard times and they're really struggling. They lump potentially everybody together in that same group. So all they say is by persons experiencing homelessness to challenge the objective reasonableness of a city or county law described in paragraph 2. So what the cities are going to confront secondarily is an onslaught of civil lawsuits where judges can then say that the city and county law is not objectively reasonable, and therefore I'm going to issue an injunction that it cannot be enforced. Which is what has had occurred to the city of Grants Pass in Oregon, not on HB 3015 because of the federal issues that we have, which I'll talk about. But the judge in the city of Grants Pass, a federal judge issued an order that the city of Grants Pass cannot enforce its no camping, sleeping, and lying laws in the parks in Grants Pass. It's a disaster. The homeless are overrunning the parks. People can't use them. It's a disaster. So so I've asked the Planning Commission study this thing. There's an exemption on 3115. And that is the city and county laws are exempted if there are policies developed per ORS 203.077 or ORS 203.079. It's basically develop a policy that recognizes the social nature of the homelessness, the problem of homeless individuals camping on public property, and implements the policy as developed to ensure the most humane treatment for removal of homeless individuals from camping sites on public properties. So what 203.077 says is you can have laws that say these folks can't stay here, you can't camp here, you can't do these things here. You just have to make sure your laws are humane. And you have to develop your policies under that. Let me see if I can. Okay. And then 203.079, a policy developed. So if you develop a policy under 203.077, you're going to have to include some extras. And I don't want to go into details about this, but basically you have to include provisions under 203.079, which is if you have a homeless agreement and you want to clear it out, you got to give 24 hours of notice in English and Spanish. It has to be posted. And then when you take the property, it has to be stored. And there are procedures. Now, what is an encampment? These are things that we should look at and define. I mean, if I go out and pitch a tent right out here, do I have an encampment? I think we should define encampment and discuss what it means to have an encampment. And so I'm here as a citizen, and this is coming before the Planning Commission tomorrow night, and I'm advocating the Planning Commission take this up as a proactive item. It's going to be up to the Planning Commission to decide. But I'm here as a private citizen advising the Parks Commission on what the potential implication is of this law for the parks. So right now, we're very effective because we're using state laws to enforce our activities which attend people who don't have a place to live that are violating our laws. And they also violate state laws. And so right now we're using state laws, which can effectively deter people by defining conduct as misdemeanor conduct. And we also have an effective jail system here, that our jail is relatively empty and open for business. And so people understand that if they do get charged with a violation here, which is a misdemeanor, they will go to jail, which means to them, if you're a junkie and you're going to be in jail for a few days, that might be a bad thing. And so we are effectively deterring the conduct because we're communicating with people that need help. We're trying to get the people who we can help. But at the same time, there are folks that don't want help. They don't want help at all. They want to continue to do their drugs, whatever. And they are effectively communicated with that, well, if you continue this behavior here, you are going to go to jail. And so if we develop a structure that is humane, then it will exempt our city and county laws, which is where I'm trying to get the planning commission to study homelessness, to study the causes of it, to study how and to communicate with our citizens and to learn a lot more about it so that we can effectively communicate with why it is that we have a right as citizens to continue to live in the community that we have and to protect ourselves from having our laws stripped away from us.
Steve, can I stop you for a minute? Rachel, before you leave, did you have anything else you'd like to add? Sandy Hollins.
I don't, I appreciate the attention to it. I don't know if we've seen any suits being filed yet in Oregon. This has been effective since July of this year.
No, July next year, July 1.
Next year, 23.
Yeah.
But just, I'm thinking ahead to the next legislative session and we'll certainly follow the lead of Oregon cities and kind of see where we wind up going. I think it's very wise to protect ourselves. I think it's very wise to have a strong network and strong definitions and really know where we're at as a city on this. I appreciate the work of the planning commission.
Well, we haven't started working on it yet. This is the work of Steve Toski.
I appreciate the attention to it. Well, it's great to have your talents in service to our city. Thank you.
Well, I'm doing the best I can. So we're all in it together. So that's why I'm here.
Yeah.
I just had a quick question on one.
Did you need to leave or have I gone?
I do. I need to get going in about 2 minutes.
Oh, okay. So
It doesn't necessarily, I was just wondering if it, while you guys are having discussions and investigating and creating terminology and definitions for this, will this include with the sitting, laying, and otherwise encampment situations like the panhandling, the folks who have been setting up on our public walkways and occupying space and otherwise asking for money or
let me go to the next one. I think I have another slide on that. I think I do. So we need to study our laws and bring all of them into compliance with treating people humanely. Just make it, I think the laws probably already comply. And the reason is that, you know, we've been enforcing these laws for years that not a one has been challenged as being inhumane, not humane. Nobody yet has said anything that we've done in all the years we've been enforcing our laws is inhumane. And so strengthening and clarifying laws regarding experiencing homelessness is another thing, and being able to, but as far as your question is concerned, there are already laws that don't allow any kind of blocking of movement on public property. So anybody who is blocking people's movement on public property, that's a misdemeanor and will be enforced in St. Helens as a misdemeanor, or at least the police have been. And so, you know, if somebody wants to set up the tent on the sidewalk, they'll be arrested here and charged with misdemeanor. And so I don't know what the law is on panhandling, and I don't know what the answer to the question will be, because right now I only have the authority to say that as a planning commissioner, I believe it's important for the planning commission to take on this issue and to study the issue, to begin our process of working with the council to advise the council, to make sure that we have data so that we can prove objectively reasonable. I mean, one day our prosecuting attorney may have to prove objectively reasonable. And we're actually trying to build resources that, look, we've studied this, we've gone through this, our laws are objectively reasonable, and this is why, so that we can win cases that where we are trying to enforce our laws. And so, you know, the question about panhandling is a question that I don't even know if it's legal or illegal in St. Helens right now. And it's not something about sleeping or lying, so we would have to look into it. I guess that would be the only thing. And so if people say we don't want panhandling, then I think the time to do that is to tune into the public meetings and to talk to the council and the planning commission and bring forward that we want to make sure that panhandling is something that, there's a lot of ways to get money. And I think there are some cases on panhandling. So that's a long answer to a short question. Anyway, so I think part of the process is going to be reviewing the laws, and that includes laws on boats, laws with vehicles, and laws regarding and to clarify who's experiencing homelessness. What does experiencing homelessness really mean? I think that choosing this as a one-size-fits-all problem, I think does a disservice first and foremost to the people who are sick and need help. And lumping them in with the person who just wants to do what they want to do and do drugs and everything else is, I think, unfair to them. I think that we need to be reaching out more to people personally, to people who need help, making sure they get the mental health. Mental health is an illness, and it's just like any other illness. If it's treatable, we should be trying to help treat people. But there are a lot of people that want to live their lifestyle, and their lifestyle conflicts with folks that say, you know what, we don't want what you're doing here around here. So what do we do with that kind of behavior? And I think starting the discussion and making these things is my idea of how we begin to start discussion of what is objectively reasonable. How do we do these things? So as far as the parks is concerned, the Parks Department, I think that as the body of the parks, I'm here as a citizen, asked to come as a citizen. I think that the parks people need to decide what use do we want to make of our parks? Do we really want our parks to have needles and folks in them and camping and things like that, or not? Right now, our city has been made it very clear that our parks are for people to enjoy, the public to enjoy, and they're not for people to occupy. But so where do we? So that brings me to Martin B. Let's see. Lisa, press the button. Press the space bar.
Steve, we've got about 5 more minutes.
5 more minutes. Okay, so Martin versus City of Boise, that is an entire different issue. That's a the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals upheld a ruling by a judge in the city of Boise that said that because a person who had no place else to go, since they had no place else to go, it was cruel and unusual punishment to write them a ticket for sleeping in a bathroom. That's the long and short of it. That is a brand new application of the Eighth Amendment. And the Harvard Law Journal has gone over it quite a bit. And there are a lot of cities that are actually attacking that application of the Eighth Amendment. It's the application of that concept of the Eighth Amendment that had the Blake versus City of Grants Pass. A federal judge then invalidated the Grants Pass ordinances against sleeping and lying over certain periods of times. And so what the city, in the event we are forced to have a place for people to stay. So when we're out of shelter space, if we are forced to have a place, I don't think that place should be the parks. That's for sure. That's my opinion. And one of the advantages that St. Helens has, we happen to have some land. All we have to do is have some place that is a place for people to lay their head for a day or two while they get themselves together and move on. It doesn't mean that we have to create a place for people. It just means that somebody has to be able to survive. What the court said was, survival is a basic human need. And so if someone doesn't have any place to go and they have to sleep in the public restroom, you can't punish them for that. And so there is a different approach. And one of them is to have a place for people to go. My advocacy, my personal advocacy is it should not be the parks. The parks, unfortunately, have traditionally become this kind of area for people to hang out and do drugs and put their tents up And what happens is the public is then deprived of it. And so one of the things that the planning commission will be working on as part of this problem is to develop a strategy to recommend to the city that we have to have some basically stopgap delays. Where will it be and what will the rules be? And that's my presentation.
Steve, I have another question.
Yes.
So Grants Pass, when the federal judge said, you know, the homeless could stay in the parks. So Grants Pass does not have an area for the homeless to go to.
Actually, the person that sued for Grants Pass didn't want to go to the shelter they had because she couldn't do drugs in the shelter. That the judge said, because they had a place. She didn't want to go there. And that's the Grants Pass decision is a very, very
And the question I have is for your group to discuss is, you know, what kind of services are you gonna, is Columbia County Mental Health going to get involved in this?
I think a lot of people are going to be involved in it and a lot of people are going to participate. I think we're the city planning commission. And so I'm only one planner. And so, there's 7 people and my recommendation is going to be to basically promote a solution that is going to keep our city the way it is and to prevent our city from losing its ability to defend its laws.
So Steve, going back to Grants Pass. So if Grants Pass had a place for this person to go, and the federal judge still nullified that. That was the shelter you said. I mean, that sounds like a pretty decent place for a person to spend a night. So I know you can't speak for the judge, but what kind of facilities is would be necessary if that, I mean, I know every judge is probably different, but was that in your opinion, was that a correct interpretation of the law?
No, I believe Martin v. Boise was a misinterpretation. I think eventually these federal laws will be reversed by the Supreme Court. This is a very unique application by the Eighth Amendment by a very liberal Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals body and another very liberal discussion. The problem with there are I don't know of any shelters, and I'm not an expert in the homeless, but I'm certainly going to become more of one that will take on people who are doing drugs actively. Because it's just, how do you control that? There are people that normally the shelters want to make a rule that you have to be clean and sober when you come here. There are a lot of people that are trying to straighten their lives out that live in the shelters, and having people coming in and using among them is very detrimental to the health and well-being of the people there. It's very disruptive. People are trying to live there and sleep there and you'll go work. And it's very disruptive to be housed with people who essentially have given their lives up to drugs. So I'm not sure, frankly, if there's such a thing that exists but to answer your question, Jerry, I don't think such a thing exists, but maybe it will one day. And maybe the state should create a place where all the people who want to do drugs should just go there and do them.
Yeah.
That's my personal opinion. And then they don't have to be in any city. They can be in the drug city and go there and do whatever they want. I don't care. What do I care? Drugs are practically legal here anyway. Just go there and do all the drugs you want. That's a personal opinion.
Yeah. In all your studies, have you found that any communities or any municipalities utilize their jail and minimum security, safety, everything is there. Every word that you, and every phrase that you use to provide a safe place, there's nothing better than a jail space. However, some jail spaces can be different than other jail spaces. Possibly people could come and go, they could do all kinds of things, but it seems to me like, yes, we do have a place to keep people safe. It just says up there on that to temporarily go. Doesn't give any guidelines of how they go, what happens, whatever. This seems to me like we do have some systems in place. We take a good look at the safety of individuals rather than incarcerating them and punishing them for something. If we could switch that around, I think it might be an idea to think about.
I'm with you. I think creative solutions are a good idea, and traditionally, I think the way society has treated behavior of intoxication in public and drug possession is incarceration. It's the removal of those kinds of laws that have caused a lot of more folks basically being on the street that are using. Is there a happy medium? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. I mean, can you, the legal concept is, okay, you're an addict, so we're gonna make you clean up. And that used to be you're in possession of meth, and now you're gonna go to jail for a year or two, and then you will clean up. So I don't know if there's a happy medium there. And I think the focus of the planning commission's gonna, we could think about things like that and other solutions potentially.
We'll see, like one thing, like the river walk. Basically, we're gonna have a very nice river walk here. Portland does, Vancouver. And, I could see homeless people going down there and camping on the beach down there or in that area. And, not to sound insensitive, because I try to be a little sensitive, but, I personally wouldn't want that to happen in St. Helens,
Well, and so I think most people in St. Helens share your sentiment. And it's not just about the Riverwalk, it's about, there could be somebody camped right out on our steps of our courthouse here. I do think that communication with our fellow governments like Portland and other places to say that, I think there is a very instinctive reaction to help out other people. But a policy of blank checks, of needle distribution programs, handing out money, no accountability. Homeless are, you call them the homeless, but they are humans, and they aren't, I think making sure we understand that people find out about where you can go and live the lifestyle you want to live and then go there. And you have cities like Portland that are now overwhelmed by essentially they're a magnet drawing in people from everywhere that believe that it's a free for all. Same thing with San Francisco. And so what the government in Salem has done is saying to cities like us, we want to take away your tools that have helped you prevent you to become these other places. And that's the thing that's the kind of dialogue we need to be having with our neighbors in other cities, is that, you need to consider whether your approach of just altruism and more altruism, you don't have enough space, you don't have enough money to take on every single person all over. We're a country of 300 million people. It's 2.5 million people. You're overwhelmed. So.
Thank you very much, Steve.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. Go Parks Commission and Parks and Recreation Commission.
Good luck on your meeting.
Thanks.
And the next item up on our agenda is the Nob Hill handrail.
We'll start off by saying, yes, it's great to have a handrail on that staircase. It was very much a surprise to me to be out of town though, and to come home and find that after we've had a lot of discussion about people saying that Nob Hill trails are inadequate, they're not wide enough, and all this other stuff, the handrail goes up the center of the staircase. And so you've got essentially about 2.5, 2 3/4 feet on the side of the handrail, which I talked to a few parents and stuff that say, you know, how do you walk up a staircase with a little kid on the side at 2.5 feet? And for many years, we've been working towards, that's a really fragile area in there. With the top of the stairs, that whole staircase used to be a drainage ditch. Kind of from the top, there's a settling area, so it's a really sensitive area up at the top. And when the water gets down there, if it gets going the wrong way, it erodes the staircase on either side. And so it's a little bit concerning to me that we've been trying to get things to grow up closer to the edge of the stairs, because we've had several events where, foot wide, 1.5 wide, goes 1.5 deep on each side of that staircase. And so it's just a little bit concerning. We've been trying to get grants to grow up in that area to put more roof structure to stop that type of thing. And now that you're down to about 2.5 feet on each side, you're getting a lot more people when they walk their dog coming up there. Dogs go up the side, going through the sandy soil. The landscaping isn't going to stay there. Some of our plants we've been working very hard at getting to grow. They grow right to the edges of that area. Well, once again, that's going to interfere with summing because you only got 2.5 to barely 3 feet. You've also got on each one of those sides, which has never been a problem until now, that dirt comes down and then it wraps around each spot on each stair. Over the last years since that handrail was, or since the staircase was put in, I personally go in there and dig those areas out every once in a while. I'm constantly tossing rock at the top of the staircase back up because it's a very steep area and it's you know, subjected to some really heavy things. And in the phase right now where we'll probably have something between 6,000 and 10,000 trips at the top of that staircase with Halloween coming. And so it's a very sensitive area. And I was just concerned that without, once again, we talk about communication here, that I would come home from being out of town and somebody decided there should be a staircase up or a handrail at the center of the staircase. And even though Friends of Nob Hill Nature Park are, say what I believe in the Parks and Trails Master Plan is to say that we manage the maintenance of Nob Hill Nature Park. That's something that we've been trying to control and make better in those areas. Suddenly are out the window. I just don't know how to treat this. I'm a little bit upset for over a month now. I've tried to have meetings with people to go out and take a look at the area. I've asked Mohammed to come out and I thought we had some meeting time set up and I've never heard back from him again after that. And I tried setting up talks with several people around the city to discuss these items. I will be bringing up some other items at another time because I'm just trying to talk about the staircase, but it's a drainage area. So there needs to be some thought put into it. And that's basically what I wanted to say. And it's communication. Once again, it's communication in the city that especially if you have a Parks Commission, a Friends group that looks after the maintenance, now we suddenly have even a whole nother thing that suddenly another division can just come in and do something in the city park with no input. And it's all communication. That's what we're lacking right now terribly in this community. And with the Parks Department and the Friends groups is communication. And once again, communication.
Also, it's our roles are somewhat ill-defined. So
Yeah.
you don't know who to communicate with.
Yeah, well, I mean, in the case of Nob Hill, I mean, it's very plain and simple that you look in there, we're the only city park that it specifically says in there that we manage the maintenance of the park, and yet there are things done in there that we don't get consulted on, or we try to talk to people to bring people out to show them what our concerns are, and I'm ignored. And so that's, once again, it comes back to what we had that huge discussion before about is communication. And that would alleviate so much frustrations if we had communication.
And paying attention to the process and who you should notify and that kind of thing, just, and sometimes it's just out of courtesy. So, yeah, all of that.
After looking after it for 15 years, I know what things do in there. You know, so for me to be totally ignored on certain things, I'm finding that very upsetting. You know, the maintenance of that staircase right now. I mean, when Halloween Town comes in, we get 3 or 4 years worth of use in that park in 7 weeks, actually 8 weeks, because the park was closed on Saturday for Halloween Town already for a couple of hours in the morning. That somebody put up closed signs and they had dancing pumpkins and all their decorations are up already in the park. So actually Nob Hill celebrates Halloween now for 8 weeks of the year. That's 2 months out of our season. So, but I'll get into that on another day.
So again, you know, I'm just gonna say we're gonna have to move forward, you know, on this and know the process, know what responsibilities and our powers and duties are. And appreciate that and go forth, you know, work with it. So read those codes and there'll be a much better understanding. There was for me.
Oh yeah, I could get into it on another one, but I'm gonna bring that up.
But thank you, Howard. And it doesn't look like Paul has come on.
Isn't that his red symbol top left?
See that?
Oh, I'm here. I've been here.
All right, Paul. So
I'm
you
just
want to
keeping
talk
quiet.
about the crosswalk at Columbia and North Bradley.
Oh yeah, yes, there by Don's Rental and Ace Hardware. Yeah, I don't know what really there is to discuss with the group other than I think didn't I bring it up at the last meeting or not?
Yes, that you were going to discuss it.
What's that?
Yeah, that you were going to discuss it or present some more. We've got your map here as well.
Yeah, I think there was, I seen an email, Shauna, you know, and she'd asked me some questions specifically about it, you know, what my concerns were, just, you know, reiterate. I mean, I've seen, you know, I crossed there quite a bit and I've not only had close calls with cars for some reason, wherever that crosswalk is located or how it's situated or whatever. Cars just don't see people in the crosswalk. Not only has it happened to me and my wife, it's that I've witnessed other people in the crosswalk and a car come around that kind of makes that corner there or whatever and just not see anybody. I don't know if it's because the Highway 30 is down a lower elevation than where the crosswalk is. And so it's just hard for cars to see or the sun or what. But anyways, it just, you know, was really just more or less, you know, I just wanted to bring it up to the city to, you know, possibly put it on their radar to, you know, kind of like what we were talking about before is just, you know, just trying to advocate that, you know, I think it needs to be looked at, you know, by somebody, you know, someone that's, you know, professional that knows that kind of stuff and figure out what would be the best way, whether it's painting a better crosswalk or putting some flashing light there or something. I don't know. But just was a concern. That's all. I don't know if anybody else had any. I didn't know if anybody else had anything more to add to it or not. That's pretty much the basis of it.
The weird crook in the road is not a good spot. My husband's gotten in a car accident there before. Someone's pulled out and hit him. It's just, I think, a bad spot for cars and pedestrians all around. So anything to improve it, I'm all for.
I'm also curious too, I know a few years ago that the police department did get some type of grant for doing like a crosswalk sting to reinforce the thought that people are supposed to stop for people in a crosswalk. So I'm wondering if the police don't need to start trying to look around to see if there's some of that money around again someday that they could get a grant or whatever to do some stings, because I know this town, that one, many other crosswalks, people just don't stop for it.
So Shauna, shouldn't this be addressed with Public Works?
Well, so here's my suggestion. I had addressed it already with Sharon. She gave some suggestions that are included in the packet. So my suggestion is the Parks and Recreation Commission push forward a recommendation to council to have Public Works look at that intersection to see if that's something we can.
So, yeah, the two suggestions that came up, whether to stripe that side of the road, actually, similar complaint came a year ago to my desk and similar concerns, and what we did, our team went back and restriped every single existing stripes on that street everywhere, and the suggestion that came from our engineering department is to restripe that side of the street, which you see in your package in red, as an option or a pedestrian sign, basically to slow people down. Now, that's something absolutely we can do. We're more than happy to do because we are a fan of safety always. Everybody is always, raised out after we put these stuff, people still don't follow the rules. That's an unfortunate kind of size where we've had a lot of speeding. So we will, and definitely we can enhance that. However, I would hope it improves the safety concerns. But no guarantees, and it becomes a law enforcement issue of, people not stopping at a stop sign, speeding.
Well, I know like some of the places in Portland have like lights that flash. To let you know that someone's-
There's a lot of things. We have reflective signs, lights that flash that are great, except those are very expensive. So this is where you get into the cost of things, right? A sign or a speeding sign that can cost $1,000. And with every inflation and all the issues we have in logistics today, it could be 2,000, right? The flashing light is 10,000. And that's where it becomes, what's the capability of the city? Buying the flashing light, which we love, that premium brand, or a sign that's still pretty good deterrence, but it's not ideal.
Speed bump?
Yeah, it would seem like, some type of a median or a safety barrier, something, because I know what you say, you put signs up or you paint the better crosswalk, people still don't always adhere to it, but I know that like those, I don't know, you can put like a pedestrian little slow down area there with like they've done in St. John's and some of those areas for crosswalks, where there's a midway point across there, a little barrier that kind of, that kind of stuff I understand costs more money, but I guess if you're looking for us to make a recommendation that's, sounds like something that's maybe more feasible that the city could do in a short term, and then maybe we could look at something that's more of a long-term, better a solution to the problem there, because it's not just a crosswalk. You've got Dutch Brothers, you've got Walgreens, you've got Ace Hardware, and everybody pulling in and out of there, and that's part of the issue too. It's just a lot of traffic right there that's going into that area, and maybe you limit people from turning off of Columbia into Ace Hardware. So I don't know. That's not my expertise, but I'm sure there's things that can be done to try to make that little area safer than what it currently is, because it's getting pretty busy.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for bringing this up to our attention. My commitment to the commission here, I will look into this and we'll find a feasible solution within our capabilities, and we'll look at it as early as end of this week, and we'll see what we can do.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Could there also be like a three-way stop?
So some of the challenges we run into with specific intersection like that, just so you folks know, there is a lot of rules and regulation from ODOT, the state, about what it means, what kind of sign you can put. There was a suggestion about mid-block intersection, which we cannot do that because it's less than 300 feet. Some of those technical terms that applies here, we have to vet through our basically, AASHTO and the state, that doesn't allow us to do. We cannot just go ahead and put a stop sign, whatever we want. There's a lot of right of way permits required from ODOT and state. So, however, the striping, I think, would be a great idea where the red line is stated. That will still give a good alert for pedestrian on that side and potentially a good speed sign.
Mm-hmm.
However, you'll see some action taken very soon.
And what are you meaning by that red area.
So that red area is put by our basically CAD technician, just to show you if we want to stripe, this would be an area where we can stripe and would be the best.
So that could become a crosswalk there where the red is.
Correct.
Okay.
The best solution for where a good crosswalk would be based on the topography and the engineering of the
Be
street.
better visible than.
Visible that's coming out. Yeah, so that's a suggestion of a location.
Would it be in addition to the other one? Like, would you let the other one fade and kind of go away, or would you
No,
make?
no, it will be an addition, because the other one's still important. Crosswalks are, it's an alert, right? You see a crosswalk, you naturally slow down, expecting people to go, and you know the speed should be 5-10 miles an hour. So yeah, we would keep the other one. We'll add a new one basically to the intersection. It'll bring a lot of awareness.
So do we have to do anything else to make a recommendation from the commission or just? Already.
Mohammed said. he would work on it.
Okay, great. Thank you. Next is staff report.
So both Tori and I are here today. We had Melissa print out just showing you what kind of reservations we had this year, because it was a remarkable record-breaking year for how many reservations we had with birthday parties and just all sorts of different events. We did 45 special use permits over the summer, which is huge. And those are packets that we fill out and get insurance and all that sort of thing. And that's in addition to the reservations that we have on here. I'm gonna go over the recreation stuff that we've been up to, and then I'm gonna let Tori talk about some of the projects that we've put forward with the Parks Department. So we right now are partnering with the Main Street Alliance on doing a scarecrow program where you can purchase a scarecrow kit to build, and then we're gonna line all the way up from uptown down to downtown with scarecrows so different families can participate. So we wanted to bring something that was something that the community can also do. And as you probably know, and I think I talked about this last time, I know last meeting I was gone, but we had gotten $150,000 grants for a summer enrichment activity. So we were able to push a lot of that money back out into the community, hiring high schoolers, as well as trying to source local supplies for the things that we're doing. We hired a lot of contract employees as far as like art teachers. We partner with Griffin's Place that provides developmental disability type of activities, which is amazing because that's not really in our wheelhouse. So it's nice to be able to partner with them on inclusive services. We also got a $15,000 grant this fall from the Northwest ESD Parenting Hub. And so we're able to hire a 10-hour-a-week early learning specialist. So they'll be joining us to offer programming from 0 to 5 years old. We had the National Guard come out and do some volunteer work at McCormick Park, and they looked at some different areas, and they picked an area where it used to be the camping area. So they cleared out a lot of the stuff there, and Tori and I had talked about what we can make that area look like for day use type of activities for people to come and visit the park instead of having it so off the beaten path and not taken care of. We also had Berry Global come out and do some volunteer work. So they had a employee banquet, and so they did some stuff for us there, and that is one of the projects that Melissa and I have been working on, is getting a new volunteer program revamped. We're hoping to kick it off in April because that's when usually the fall cleanups and that's when Earth Day is, and to have different levels of volunteerism that you can do. We have some ideas for swag, such as you can get a magnet for that certain park or coffee mug with that park on it to help, tie in the pride of our parks here. We are getting ready to launch basketball, which that program usually brings in about 500 kids in the winter time. We also started adult softball, and that has taken up some time too with park staff on lining the fields and doing some different work with that. After school program just started, and we are maxed out on students there. We have a wait list of about 20 kids because some of our after school providers here in town have actually shut down or have focus more on their early learning. So we're trying to figure out a way that we can partner better with the school district to provide that care. But right now we have 25 full-time students, and that's the IGA with Emily will be working on talking about what that 5-year plan looks like as far as invasive plants, maintaining those waterways. And then I'm gonna go ahead and turn it over to Tori to talk about a few projects that we've been doing.
Yeah, we did some benches this last month. We got one at Nob Hill. We got 4 over at Campbell on the new pickleball courts and the new futsal. We got 1 over at McCormick Park for a memorial bench. We got a new drinking fountain down at the new covered area at McCormick, and then a bunch of field prep for the softball.
And we also got benches, over at the playground at McCormick Park, which I know when we first put the park in, we didn't have the grass all planted and what we wanted that to look like, but we were able to get some concrete poured and worked with Public Works and Roger in Public Works, who's been an amazing support with us as well. So we've been getting these projects pushed forward. We have some barbecuers that we're looking at where we're gonna install them, some new ones, and yeah, so just kind of, oh yeah, and Blazers are coming. So the Rip City Fair is coming on September 15th. That's something that I've been in the works for the past 4 years since we even thought about the grant with the playground structure, but COVID has kept getting in the way, and we finally got them to come out. And so on Thursday from 4 to 6, McCormick Park is going to be turned into a big basketball court and different vendors around, and you all are welcome to come. Hopefully you all got my email asking if you wanted to come and stand at the booth with us. I know they are making a donation to the Sharp After School program as well. So yeah, lots of stuff going on.
Councilor Shreveport.
Well, I've got a fairly extensive one here. It's probably gonna take about 45 minutes or so. I don't know.
Cereal, dinner?
45 seconds. Actually, I really like what I heard about communication and then somewhat about the municipal code, about what your responsibilities are. And I heard two things. I heard Paul Barlow and from Howard Blumenthal, some requests. And I think you need to act on those. If you act on those, this way I know the process. If you act on those and vote on them, they go to the secretary. The secretary types them up and sends them to Kathy Payne. And Kathy Payne will then put those on the agenda for the city council. Okay, that's the method, that's the process. And that takes it off of Doug Martin's shoulders to try to figure out really what went on here. And then come to council, and during my report in council, it becomes my agenda, not yours. And I think that that's so important, follow that process. And in communication, I just heard a pretty thorough communique to you folks from the Parks Commission about what's happened in the past, what's going on now, and maybe some issues of what can happen in the future. I was listening very carefully for that, and I got bits and pieces of that. But I think it's real important for you to know what's happened in the past, but you're asking about budget kinds of things too. And one of the things that when I oversaw this commission, I always asked this commission to figure out what they needed for equipment, or ask the parks people what they needed for equipment, what you folks thought was needed for the parks as well. And those things were taken to the budget committee, and they were talked about at the council for the most part before the budget meeting. But all this has to happen prior, or if you're about dollars and cents, make certain that you know that our budget committee things start to roll around the first of the year. And then by the time even sooner than that, in the fall, you start to figure out what you think that the parks should have. And remember, it's a recommendation. It isn't that you're gonna go rattle the cage from one of the staff members and say, we need this, we need this. It's a recommendation to the council. The council will rattle the cages, hopefully, if the council agrees. So that's the process, and it boils down to good thorough communication and good policy, staying with the policy. So in short, 6:15, that's what I have.
Thank you.
Can I thank you very much for your comment. And I know I asked earlier about those kinds of things. I'm still learning as we go on, and I really appreciate your updates. And it's nice to know, for me, when I ask about the budgets and kind of where the money that is already budgeted, where it's allocated specifically and what is on their agenda, so that I can continue to look at what other things I may need to request additional money for or whatnot. So when I ask those kinds of questions, know that it's really for my forethought and planning, so that I can see where I don't have to focus, because I know they got it. And so I just
Yeah, well, I
really
appreciate that, and I also have budgets for everyone. And just to let you know, for this year's budget, it's just maintaining what we can do with toilet paper and things like that. That's what we were allowed in the budget this year. We did get an increase on our materials, but that's only because toilet paper and stuff went up in price.
We just spent.
And then to get the increase in materials, we got a decrease in our professional services. So you'll see that I highlighted, you can see the parks budget on this side, the recreation on this side. Recreation operates on a lot of grants. That's why you do hear me talk about a lot of grants in recreation. Parks grants are out there, but they're very much capital improvement type things. And when you don't have the plan or the staffing to do those things yet, that's why, whereas recreation, there's a lot of money out there for staffing, which is way different than, it's
Yeah.
It's a little bit, yeah.
With the park benches, I know you guys received a bunch as a donation.
Yeah.
And so did you just receive the benches themselves, the physical objects as the donation, and then the city paid out of their budget for the installation, or was the installation also supported?
So we had some cement left over that we were able to do the donated for this last one, but it would come in a package. Normally they would pay for the park bench. And we've been getting a lot of park bench donations from the Lions Club, which is amazing. And I've been working with Kathy on what future ones. And in fact, in October, I'd asked her to come and talk here about all the great things that they do for our parks. And I'm hoping to get different user groups to come each month to talk, so you guys have an idea that we do have a disc golf group that really maintains the course and does things, and they just put a new kiosk. And that's one thing that we forgot, is we did put in 4 kiosks as well. We rebuilt the Lions Club one, we put one over in McCormick. We did the disc golf one. They provided the materials and stuff, and we provided the labor. And then I think there's one more that's going over at Campbell Park. Yeah.
Are those kind of all being on the same motif of the ones like at Dalton Lake and Nob Hill, or are they different types of kiosks?
So similar, like the wood built ones, the ones that we have for McCormick and Campbell are a little different because they have plexiglass.
Yeah, where you
This is
can
for the communications,
put things up, little flyers.
marketing, yeah, so.
It's still on that.
Yes, yeah, so it's a little bit more, and
Constantly replacing phone
marketing,
packs.
yeah, and marketing actually paid for that other budget. So we are partnering with other, not just other businesses around town and watershed council, but we're also partnering with other departments to see how we can help them spend some of their budget too.
And I got a couple comments. Okay, one comment was yesterday I went and played pickleball
Yeah.
and there were 8 people there. And we looked at the court, Brandon and myself, and Scott was there. And we were kind of curious about how the court would play, that they played fine. The other thing I want to comment on is, I wasn't gonna say anything about the urban trails day, but I just can't come here and do that because and I can't remember exactly how this worked out, but I think Mohammed sent out an email that said, hey, I'd like to know what's happening there. And then in a meeting, Shauna said, hey, we need to go there. So Lynn, Howard, Carmen, and myself, we walked the urban trail. And we made a list of the minimum things we needed for it. I know people talked about making the trails shorter and then extending it later on. But at the thing I really want to comment on here is though, a couple months ago, we asked the city council to request the city to make a budget so we can get grants. Like, a couple months ago, there was these opportunities here. There was $4 million is available in the state transportation operating funds for smaller construction projects of 300,000 to $1 million. The city does have to put forth 30% in that. But we realize, the committee that's been working on this, that probably the city's not going to pay for this. It's probably going to have to come from a grant. The crosswalks, Mohammed could probably put those in there. And there's a few other things that, the city could probably do. But if we're going to write a grant, we need to know what we're asking for and how much it's going to be. So the thing I'm asking is, a couple months ago, we put that, and I'd like to see the communication coming back to us, say, yeah, hey, yeah, we did make up a budget for this. And, this is how much, the minimum is. Granted, there should be overlooks in there that there's lots of other things that could happen here, but this is what we thought was the minimum thing. So my point being is that, we got to have how much it's going to cost before we start asking for grants.
Dick, did you have some?
Yeah, I just want to back up with what Jerry's reporting on that. If you are going forward with grants, make certain that, and I know that I don't think you're doing this at this point, there are in-kind volunteer hours that are very important in those grant applications. And because you mentioned monetary kinds of things, and that's really important to figure out at some time how many hours you're putting into in-kind work in the parks, so that can be acknowledged in the grant. And I think it's quite.
Again, I had never thought about this, Doug, but I know that I'm putting words in Howard's mouth now. But I know that I'm willing to, paint the horizontal markers on the street. The pedestrian lane that goes down Parkway Street. I mean, I'm willing to do that. I'm also willing to, install, the vertical post, if the city paid for the posts and they paid for the ready mix concrete, there's a lot of things that I would be willing to do. And I know Howard said he would be willing to do some of those things. And there might be other people that would be also willing to do those things. But the point I'm trying to make is, we made a motion, to say, how much is this going to cost? I mean, there's, I don't know, probably 10 things on here, 9 line items, and, someone that, like Mohammed, he could probably, I know he's not that he's not busy, but I mean, he could probably.
I didn't see you on Monday, just so you know. I'm extremely busy and beyond my capacity, just so you know.
So who do you connect with over there at Public Works? Would that be Buck Tupper,
So, yeah. I think I have a lot of admiration and respect to the Parks Commission specifically, because you guys are the most passionate people I've met in my career. Seriously, who cares? I love city parks and how much you do. But that's number one, it's a big plus. This project is not impossible, and I think we can do it as a team. We will put resources and do whatever it takes to make it happen, because I know it's a big dream to Mr. Morton, to you and everybody else. And I would love to give you that legacy. As much as I wanted to be honest when I sent that email to let you guys know this is complex project. It's not as simple as put in sticks and go, and there is a lot of work to be done. However, it's not impossible. We can do it. If we can phase it out, look at phases, right? The complexity that the Riverwalk adds, which I already highlighted that, is really, this is going live in a couple months, folks. It's gonna change the city out. That's a $15 million project, gonna impact everything going this way. So that's just, the areas are very sensitive to put anything, because you don't wanna put something and take it off. I will rip it off through construction, it's not. So we focus on the areas that can be done. And if we can gather, as I said, Public Works will provide full support in every corner we can to save you cost, time, money, anywhere we can with our resources. And in collaboration, I think we can make it happen.
So who would we start with? So we can get an
So,
idea
yeah,
about how
Bob
much.
Bob
this-
Tepper is our facilities maintenance supervisor now. He's a good contact for a lot of that public right of way facilities, and Dave Elder as well.
Okay,
So those two should be also involved together. Anything that you guys want to do?
You know, we talk about, you know, the chain of command. And, you know, where do we go? You know, I tried to not interfere with the people down here at City Hall very much. I don't go down and rattle their cages every week or every month and say, hey, what's going on here? So when I come to the meetings here, you know, I say, hey, this is kind of what I would like to see happen. And so we pass this out, it goes to the city. I see this as the city staff's responsibility to say, hey, everyone who's in charge of Buck Tupper, say, hey, Buck, I know Buck, and say, hey, Buck, you know, I need you to go through this and figure out how much all this would cost and what the labor would be and you know, come up with a figure so we can do that. I don't see that as my job. I see that as the city staff who's ever in charge of Buck Tupper, say, hey, Buck, hey, I request you to do this. And it doesn't have to be done overnight, but I don't see that as my job going down to Buck Tupper and to Buck Tupper says, who are you telling me what to do? You know, I don't want to tell him what to do.
I completely understand. Yeah. So and there's cross-departmental collaboration here, right? This is a park facility, right? Shauna, Parks and Rec. She has, for example, estimation, right? I'm not sure her resources or who do you use if you want to get a cost estimate on certain parts, right? But you also can connect with the right folks in our department, right? And ask for those recommendations. And that's kind of where her role to come pass this information back to you, also not to step on anybody's roles.
Yeah.
Within the staff and who oversee departments, you know, people get sensitive, like who the certain item.
Sure.
Well, I can't do this, right? And of course, nobody knows their work schedule, right? There are certain phases of the city, like Halloween Town, that consumes 100% of our fees, right? We have so much going on here, so much maintenance, that they're not just idle waiting for a project this big to take off, right? But how can we integrate that into what we're doing today? And you know, if we take it to pieces, right, phases, we can chop it off to phases and tackle areas that implement it that way. That would be a great project management approach, and it's doable. It's just a grand, you know, plan where we want to do it all at once.
So I
Okay,
think the
what-
next steps will be that me and Mohammed will talk about what that looks like and we'll loop you guys in.
And then get
So
back.
that looks like, yeah.
Keep us in the loop.
And we'll talk to Mark and Dave,
And pass it on.
get them all going with it.
yeah.
So I have an item, if we're on to discuss an item.
Yes.
Sounds like, I'm going to be resigning from the Parks Commission, because of just time commitments and other priorities that I need to focus on. And so, this will be my last meeting. There are plenty of other good candidates out there. I know we've had a lot of good interviews, so I have no doubt that someone will come on board and step right in and jump in and be able to do more than I can commit to over the next year, so.
So you're not waiting till the end of the year?
Nope, and my term doesn't end until, if it ended the end of this year, I'd probably stick it out, but it doesn't end until the end of next year, so. This is almost 5 years on the commission, so I think it makes sense to open it up and let somebody else come in and.
I sure appreciated your dedication.
I want to thank all of the staff, has been amazing over the time, all the commissioners, I just, yeah, it's been.
Fun serving
It's been
with
a good
you.
experience and I still want to be involved in volunteering. I just don't want to coordinate it. So I will still show up for cleanups and be around. So if you guys need help on something, please reach out to me. Keep me up to date.
Don't worry, we will.
If I see something, I'll come give some public comment for you guys.
Carmen, thank you for the service.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. So stop by.
Okay, well, is there any other discussion? Hey, Jerry?
I was just wondering, are we gonna continue giving reports on parks?
Yes, and I'll contact somebody that hasn't done that yet. Okay, if there is no other discussion, the meeting is adjourned.
I was just gonna ask if there's anything you need to do for opening up the position for posting. I don't know if the motion needs to be made. I don't know.
It would be up to Kathy Payne, but we don't send that in, so she would announce it. So I'll probably use your past experience for that. Okay. Contact her. Okay, any other discussion? Okay. Meeting is adjourned.
Are those rough to?
Yeah.
These Jason.